Hey, yo, Frank, and then the guy that shot your friend? You know, you were looking suspicious to me. I was thinking there was somebody I was looking for, somebody I know pulled the trigger. And I know could be anybody in this train. But now that I see you and I hear these things, the person I've been wanting to shoot, that I need to kill for revenge purposes, might actually be standing in front of me. But let me explain further in detail about how I've come to this revelation before I eventually, maybe, pull the trigger.
Everything that's ever happened to you
This is gonna sting, bitch!
has led you here. Fate.
That's a shit deal.
And today we have Bullet Train. You gotta have heard about this one, right? AAA blockbuster. I've been seeing ads for this movie for literally months. There have been 2 different trailer cuts. There's all these behind the scenes now. Marketing over the last week has been blowing up. There's actor featurettes basically showing us the entire film, but I'll get to that in a minute. Director David Leitch right here. David Leitch, he's done, I think his filmography includes about 10-ish films, but they're big, heavy hitters. Most notably, probably Deadpool 2 is a more recent example, but I like Atomic Blonde a bit more. I just like Atomic Blonde in general, mainly for that stairway scene. But along the short of it is that this guy has been in Hollywood now for a while, and he's used to making action films, both grounded action flicks as well as bigger blockbuster style, shit's flying around, guns a-blazing type of stuff. If there's one thing you certainly would have heard about this film, it's that Brad Pitt is the star. Household name, no need to go into any kind of filmography here. It's Brad Pitt. I could spend literally like a good 10-20 minutes going into every single one of the rogues gallery of would-be, wannabe assassins, murderers, and psychopaths, but the ones I actually want to give a big shout out to, the twins, no, the other twins. That's it, yeah. Lemon and Tangerine. Aaron Taylor Johnson and Brian Tyree Henry. I believe that's Brian Tyree Henry. They're great. Arguably, they steal just about every scene they're involved in, and I love their dynamic in particular. I think most people that have seen the movie at this point definitely like those 2 characters are probably the most. A couple notes I want to make in terms of casting, because I just think they're funny and ironic. It's funny to see Zazie Beetz, who played Domino in Deadpool 2, Domino being a character who is so lucky that just nothing bad can happen to her. The main character in this movie is in a similar situation where it's like, oh, I'm so unlucky, but literally his unlucky is what keeps him alive. Similar to her character, who the same director has brought over to this movie. It's just a lot of coincidences in narrative that I don't think is lazy, but it was noticeable enough where I was like, oh, seeing her in this with knowing he's in this in the same context is ironic. I find it really funny that they have Michael Shannon, an American actor, playing a Russian character. It's kind of a Gary Oldman situation all over again. But Bullet Train, what did I think about it? When I first walked out, I had mixed feelings, and then as I've let it marinate, come to a more positive outlook on the film and my enjoyment and all that. My enjoyment was clouded because the first trailer for this film it's pretty great. It's a pretty great, solid first trailer. Then they dropped a second trailer like weeks before the movie came out, and ladies and gentlemen, the biggest pet peeve, and this legitimately makes me upset. They show so much of the movie. In that second trailer, they're showing like a train crash. They're showing like what looks to be the end of the film and like who's made it out and people getting shot and what happens. It's like, no, you don't do that. But I made a bet saying that there was a scene in the trailer and I was like, oh, that's the end of the movie. And someone was like, oh, well, maybe it couldn't be. I'm like, no, just it's gonna be. Like, I can tell. I don't often toot my own horn, but I'm intuitive. If I'm nothing else in this life, it's at least intuitive when it comes to cinema and games and narrative design. If you show me a few scenes from a trailer, I can piece together the narrative. Especially as I'm watching the film, I can fit the puzzle pieces in my head. I'm not stupid. I can see a narrative start to play out and I'll think, oh, I remember in this scene in the trailer, they're in this area. This area in the movie looks pretty similar. I bet I know what's gonna happen. But this new practice of basically telling you what's gonna happen in the movie before you see the movie, like Gray Man did with a literal Netflix ad, first of all, go fuck yourselves. Absolutely go fuck yourselves. Like, that's not, why would I want to see the movie now? I know what's gonna happen. Like, no. I want to be as surprised and blind as I can be. I want you to give me an idea of what I'm going to see so I can then pay you money to go then see it and experience that for the first time. Rant over, I'm sorry. So the trailer had me a little bit like already kind of pissy going into it. I was still excited for it. But honestly, I had a really good time with Bullet Train. I don't think it was fantastic. The best example of what tickles my fancy, what really gets me off when it comes to this kind of film is, I always refer to it, but Free Fire. There's like 20 minutes of build-up, and then arms deal goes wrong. The rest of the movie is like over an hour-long shootout with notable cast and characters, surprising amount of character development. It's quick, it's funny, it's violent, but it's kinetic, and it's going at a fast, steady pace. Bullet Train, I love the aesthetic of this film. It's like if Train to Busan were a Quentin Tarantino film instead of a zombie film. Like, it's cool that it mostly, like 95% of it takes place on a bullet train. A bunch of characters that all have they're all unique characters, uniquely portrayed. Getting into the pros, action and choreography is creative and it's fun. It is kinetic whenever it does happen, whenever it does spike up. It's not consistent. I almost wish, I normally wouldn't be vying for like action, but I wish the first two acts of this film were more on par with how the third act kind of went, because I felt like that was kind of the tone they were going for. But instead, we start getting expository and building up to what is eventually going to happen, or what eventually could happen. As I said, cast is great. I think everybody's having a good time in this film. Brad Pitt's character, Ladybug, I have mixed feelings on. I think he's like charming, he has his quirks to it, but at the same time, it's like, what doesn't make sense for me and what kind of takes me out of the film is that I know it's part of his thing is he's supposed to be bumbling. He's supposed to be like, whoa, I don't know, like I'm just kind of stumbling through these missions and things kind of somehow work out because I'm so unlucky. Like, he's lucky because he survives, but unlucky because wherever he goes, people around him die. But that's kind of like part of his job. But then it just takes me out of it because I'm like, how did this guy get to where he is, and why is he doing the job he's doing? And then how am I supposed to feel any real sense of danger or stakes if they kind of spell it out that this guy's not going to perish? I like R-rated violence. It's not over-the-top gore. There are definitely some gory bits, but I mean, it's all just kind of violence. It's that classic, you shoot people, you see the effect of that. People are getting sliced by katanas. People are getting like grievously injured, or people are flat out getting obliterated. But contextually, for the action going on in the film, it's all just kind of fun and violent and all makes sense. And like I said, I love the aesthetics of everybody. Everybody as a character has their own like visual thing going on, whether it's the weapons they use, their personality or lack thereof, or just kind of what they're wearing. But there's also a caveat to that I'll get to in just a second. Because then we get into the cons, right? Like, the story's got a lot going on. It's not too complicated to follow, but it's a little overinflated. And some other critics have mentioned this, and I agree, heavily expository. By that I mean there is a lot of exposition that's explaining to you through character dialogue and flashbacks what is going on. I kind of like when you're left to either piece together elements of the story, or perhaps you're visually shown, or you're given information through light use of flashbacks or exposition. And not to say this film handles that poorly, it's just there's just a lot there, and it can get a little bit convoluted trying to keep track of, okay, wait, why are they there? Who's that guy again? Why is this person wanting to... Okay, but wait, who shot who? Like, one of the main complaints I have is that with all these cool, interesting characters, they don't get a lot of screen time. You don't delve into much anybody. I mean, hell, there's characters in the trailer, and that scene in the trailer of a certain character, that's their screen time, aside from maybe a minute or two extra. There's just some characters that are introduced and have these backstories, and even if they aren't supposed to be the main character, you would think they'd get more screen time. Hell, even our main character, I would argue, does not get as much development as a couple other characters in this film do, which is just kind of surprising. I don't know. If you're gonna have this wide of a cast, either everybody's gonna be shallow with a little bit of digging, or if you're gonna really expand into characters, at least give everybody kind of a chance to have those moments. I think my biggest complaint with this film is that things don't happen quickly enough sometimes. Don't get me wrong, I love me some Pulp Fiction, some Tarantino, heavily dialogue-based scenes, and there are some killer scenes in this film with great, funny, fun, back and forth dialogue. A lot of times it's either a little bit too congested, maybe it's the showing I went to, the audio mixing might not have been great, but sometimes people they'll talk around an issue too much. There's moments where intuitively you gotta be able to figure out this is the person I need to shoot. I need to shoot this person right now because I just put it together in my head that you are the person I'm looking for. But instead of just being like, oh, I realized it, bam. It is just sitting there talking and going on and monologuing, and I'm just thinking why nobody takes action in this film until it's too late. Now, then, when they do take action, the action's great, the pace picks back up again. These weird moments of script and dialogue downtime that's where the pacing kind of gets weird for me, is it just trim the fat a little bit, make it a bit quicker, make people a bit more logical, maybe a bit more reactive, something like that. It would make more sense logically and wouldn't take me as much out of the film as it did in those few parts where it happens. I think a lot of people feel this way, and it goes for both film and television. If you want me to be invested in a character, there need to be stakes. I need to feel like whatever situation you're putting your character in could go one way or the other. In this film, I never felt like Brad Pitt was in danger. That's me personally. Because they establish his character's traits, and by literally showing you on screen, he just can't seem to get hurt or die. It just can't seem to happen. In my head, I'm like, okay, he's gonna get a little bit banged up, but nothing bad will happen to him. And so, regardless of what does or doesn't happen to him now going forward in the film, no matter how dinged up he gets, I never felt stakes for it. I never really was rooting for anybody in particular. I think I was rooting for one, maybe two people to die. That was it. There were two people I was like, man, I hope they get their comeuppance, and that was it. There were a couple of characters that I was like, oh, I hope they don't die, but I never really felt that there were stakes. And granted, throughout the film, there were stakes that were brought up here and there. Things do happen. Some people in this film don't make it to Rush Hour 3, you know what I'm saying? For the guy that we're supposed to be rooting for, our main protagonist, I just, sure, it was fun, it was cool to watch, entertaining, he did it well, he had fun. I just didn't feel any sense of connection or stakes tied to his character. At the end of the day, Bullet Train was super fun. I would go see it again. I saw it on IMAX the first time. Maybe I'll see it in a different format. I didn't love Bullet Train. It's growing on me. As I think about it, it's growing on me. But I'm almost worried it's like a Hollywood bright and shiny version of what films like Pulp Fiction and Free Fire can bring us. The action was great. It was fun. When it's operating at its best is really good. Characters were cool, love the aesthetics and all that, etc., etc. Overall, I would say Bullet Train is, end of the day, I'd give Bullet Train a low, just barely made it to a low 4 out of 5. I give it a low 4 out of 5. Might I change my opinion on that in the near future? Sure. But as it stands, I want to be fair. In terms of my personal enjoyment and its quality of a film, both of those had highs and lows. The film could have used some work in terms of story and its characters a bit more, and my enjoyment could have been made better if the film's pacing in paces could have been just fine-tuned and tweaked a little bit here and there. But overall, I don't have a lot of complaints, just more a lot of notes, Thank you guys and gals so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of whatever I do next. And goodbye, travelers.